All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Goff. I'm the founder of Natur Athletics. We make wide toe box soccer cleats that can be used for really any sport on grass, and they allow people to restore their natural foot function and have natural foot alignment. Joining me today is Drew Skundrich, who was the captain of Loudon United, and that he is now on the strength and conditioning staff for Loudon United. So he wore the cleats all last season and describing them. So thank you very much, Drew, for joining me today. If you'd like to go ahead and give yourself a little introduction.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Jeff, for having me. I'm excited to talk all things nature athletics and barefoot today. Yeah, little background information about me. I played professional soccer for 8 years, just retired in the fall, and am now the strength and conditioning coach, performance coach for Loudoun United in the USL Championship. Um, I played in several different locations, played in college as well, just a big soccer background. Um, I kind of got into the barefoot journey after getting plantar fasciitis towards the end of my career. Um, and that's when I kind of started getting into strengthening my feet, getting connected to the ground, and then obviously the barefoot shoes, the minimalistic shoes that we know so well with Nature Athletics. I started dabbling with those types of things, and I honestly found that it worked so well for me. My feet felt incredibly strong. I just felt like I was moving properly throughout my body. So, yeah, just a brief introduction to my background and then my experience with the barefoot journey so far.
Cool, thanks. So you mentioned that you had an injury that led you towards adopting barefoot shoes and natural movement. Was that like a acute injury, or was that kind of like a accumulation of things that happened throughout your career?
I think it was more accumulation of things that happened throughout my career. It was more of a chronic overuse type injury with plantar fasciitis. Um, I think just over time, my feet being so compressed and not in the proper position that they needed to be, I just wasn't moving properly. And a lot of that tension was probably being stored in my plantar fascia. And it was just having to overwork to compensate for other areas in my body. And I think it eventually just gave out. So that's my guess as to what happened. I think it was more of the chronic wear and tear over a career, just from moving improperly. I think it just showed up in my foot, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. So if you could go back and do it all again, what would you tell your younger self, young Drew that's playing on Stanford's team? What would you tell him to set him up for the rest of his life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would probably tell him to focus less on pushing himself to maximal limits every training, every day, and focus more on moving intentionally. Because I think having a foundation of proper mechanics, proper biomechanics, sets you up for success to not only remain healthy throughout your career, but be more efficient with your movement as well. So if I was moving better throughout my career, maybe I would have had less injuries. Maybe I would have just been yeah, overall healthier, more available, a longer career. Who knows? So I think I would go back and tell myself to focus more on just moving properly rather than worrying about hitting certain targets, and pushing myself to the max, no matter how well or improperly I'm moving at the time.
Yeah, it's hard not to, especially when you're young, like try and redline it and brute force through things all the time. It really brings to mind a Bible verse that I really love, and it's Ecclesiastes 3:11 through 12. And really, the thrust of it is that everything requires patience in God's planning, and everything is beautiful in its own time. And so when we try to like rush the process and take shortcuts, that's when we unfortunately find out that those shortcuts do not lead down a good path and it leads to an early break. And that's all too common throughout competitive atmospheres. It happens a lot in the Marine Corps too. I'm a Marine Corps officer, and people are always pushing themselves to the limit and not thinking about what's the best way to move, like you're talking about. And sometimes coaches can tell us like bad things and push us in bad directions. From my own experience, the Marine Corps, what they do is they teach us to open up your stride, overstride as much as possible when you're wearing a combat wear, and to never run. But what that does is it puts all the compression into your joints, and that's why nobody has any cartilage in their knees after they're done with like 3 years in the Marine Corps. And they're just wad up and spit out and thrown away. And then the VA has to take care of it for the rest of their life. Is there anything like that happens in soccer?
100%, yeah. Coaches push you to your limits all the time, whether it's in a fitness test or just during training. You're always being tested physically and expected to push through pain, push through injuries, not only in soccer, but I think in all professional sports, collegiate sports, competitive sports, athletes are told to push through pain to to perform as best they can, um, when really their body is flagging them, telling them that something's wrong, so you should probably slow down, try to figure it out, and not have to deal with pain anymore. But I think that's just the culture in sports nowadays, is just to keep pushing through anything you might have, um, to try to win, try to get a result, try to help the team. But maybe the best thing for you at that time is actually taking a step back and slowing down to help the team in the long run, so that you're available rather than pushing through pain. So it's definitely prevalent in all sporting endeavors, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, it's really corrosive to like overall like long-term health for an athlete or even a combat athlete. I mean it's necessary in ways because like as a Marine, like you can't just like let pain dominate your life on the battlefield, or else you can get yourself in compromised positions. You need to be able to push through that pain. But they also say like pain is weak, pain is weak body in the Marine Corps. And then you kind of like see that permeating through competitive sports because they like look at the Marines or SEALs as like the top of the top. And it's like if those people are psychos, they're pushing through everything I should too. And like you're also always constantly evaluated. Like in the Marine Corps, we have like two yearly tests. We have the PFT and the CFT, the fitness test and the personal fitness test. And you always have to meet those standards to like stay in the Marine Corps. But like what standards are they pushing on you that you're always having to meet? And like what kind of shortcuts are you like trying to take in order to like stay at that standard?
Hmm. Hmm. Um, yeah, we have fitness tests, obviously, that we kind of need to pass each year, similar to yours. Um, it doesn't determine if we're gonna be a professional soccer player or like still have our contracts pretty much. Um, there are there are also standards in terms of getting medical exams and checked out by a physical therapist kind of before you sign a contract if you've had previous injuries or if you're worrisome to the general manager, something like that. So they do have those kind of contingencies in place. But back to the fitness tests. Yeah, you are expected to be fit, to be able to push past certain limits, and that's a requirement of the sport. You just have to be fit, strong, healthy to be able to compete. Um, but yeah, they I think in general, athletes and coaches tend to focus more on just the results of these fitness tests rather than how those results are being achieved. Um, I think the process can be put to the side sometimes, and data can just be chased. Um, so I think that, yeah, there's just kind of caution is thrown to the wind sometimes, which is unfortunate for the athletes in particular if they're just seen as something that's kind of disposable, if there's just another speck of data in terms of the grand scheme of things. It's a shame because they're putting their livelihoods out there, trying to compete every day, trying to work, yeah, work as hard as they can for everything. So it's a shame that sometimes they're just seen as little data points along the way.
Well, you definitely got to be your own best advocate. And you mentioned about like people don't think about the how they're achieving those goals, but the how is so important. And what led you to think about like, okay, I really need to think about the how. I really need to think about this. And when you did recalibrate your incentive system essentially and think about the how did that ripple through your life and bring, newfound vitality?
Yeah, so I think I didn't realize what the how, or how important kind of the how was, until late in my career when this plantar fasciitis started showing up. And I actually saw a physical therapist. I didn't really um, like go and see them too much, but just from having conversations with them and seeing them once or twice, it really opened my mind to a different perspective that I hadn't really come to before. And that was basically that I was just, yeah, like I said before, moving improperly over time. And I covered a lot of ground throughout my career, um, but I wasn't thinking of how. And I think that I was moving improperly for so long that eventually my body was just breaking down because of it. And I didn't really stop and think about that until I had spoken with him. So he kind of opened my eyes and said, "Well, why are you running so much? Like, what are your teammates doing? What are their positions on the field? Are you covering for them? Why are you covering for them?" Um, Lots of things like that. So, like the little details matter. Um, and then yeah, we just got onto the topic of movement and how movement affects your body in so many different ways, not only because or not only from what you're doing on the field, but what you're doing off the field as well. So a lot of resting positions we don't think about at all. Um, so, for example, the way you sit on a couch can affect your posture and your movement overall in general. So, me and my wife actually joke about getting rid of our furniture because, because of these conversations, which I think is awesome, so funny. So we've spent a lot of time sitting on the floor recently, but yeah, just things like that, like resting positions all day. Those take a toll on your body over time if you're constantly hunched over a desk or looking at a computer screen or your phone all the time. That's going to affect your posture, tighten you in places that shouldn't be tight, and affect your movement in that capacity too. So um, not only on the field do things affect you, but in just in life in general, all across the day, what you're doing habitually with your body goes into how you can move in general. So that is kind of what sparked my interest in the how.
Yeah, it's kind of like a full spectrum thing that people don't think about. Like just beyond the whole entire like foot health thing is that everything else kind of feeds into it. You were talking about resting postures. There was a study that was done by some Japanese researchers on kind of like a little bit old baseball players that are like 10 to 14 years of age, and they were thinking about like, okay, what's their foot posture? They were testing them for what kind of like floating toes they had, if their toes were up while they were on the floor or if they were all the way down. and how that affected their ability to utilize their elbow and their arm. And they found that people that were in traditional Japanese homes, the players that were in Japan that lived in traditional Japanese homes, had better resting foot postures and had their toes all the way on the ground, were getting injured less, and had better velocity and spin rate on their ball. Whereas the Japanese players that were more westernized home, that were like sitting in chairs and all this other junk, they had floating toes and they were getting injured more in their elbow. So like those things have a direct downstream effect on how you perform on the field that you have no idea about, that you don't think about. And it's amazing that
100%.
you are thinking about that, because way more people need to do that.
Yeah.
Our common friend, John Carabino, he does that himself. He has like all floor resting furniture in his house. His kids are on the floor all the time. He's setting the example. He's doing amazing stuff. And he's like one of the best movers on earth. Extremely fast, and he's in his 30s, and he says he's faster now than he was when he was an NCAA athlete.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, that's definitely the way that I'm kind of shifting as well in terms of the resting positions and like getting rid of furniture. Just I have an office over here, and my desk moves up and down, so I have a lot of time I just spend with the standing desk, just because I know it's so much better for me, and I just feel more comfortable doing it now. Um, Another big realization for me in terms of the resting positions was what position am I in when I'm sleeping? And when I was sleeping with my plantar fasciitis, I didn't realize this before I had got it, but once I got it and I thought about it more, I was laying on my side. I sleep on my side, and one foot is kind of hooked by another. So it's constantly in this kind of curled position. So that was just leading to extra tightness in the area that probably made the injury spiral because of it. So it was probably another factor that went into it, but something that I didn't think about ever, and I wouldn't have thought about that if I hadn't talked to the physical therapist and gotten the injury. So sometimes it takes these events in your life, unfortunately, sometimes to start thinking in a different way. But if you actually go and kind of search for these things on your own, or just listen to podcasts like this, maybe you'll find something new that you hadn't really thought about before. So yeah, I think it's cool that kind of these ideas are spreading without people having to go through something to come to those realizations.
Yeah, hopefully people can take interviews like this and not have to go through a catastrophic event and learn the hard way, and instead they just recalibrate themselves and make it their mission to know that they can be their own healer. They can change, and it's all within their power, because they're not destined for injury. They can take the changes and enact them in their life right now in order to figure out how to become a better mover, a more natural mover, gain a better foundation for their whole entire athletic life. So that leads us to the plantar fasciitis. And how did you resolve that? What kind of like foot strengthening and foot restoration protocols did you do? And how did Nature Athletics Cleats help you out with that?
Yeah, so yeah, the plantar fasciitis kind of started my barefoot journey. So initially, when I got the injury, my trainer sent me to the doctors, and the doctors put me in a boot for 4 weeks. And when I was wearing the boot around, I was kind of thinking, man, my foot doesn't really feel any better. And after the 4 weeks, I came out of the boot, and it didn't feel any better. Um, so I was like, okay, I was started doing my own research and found that I should have been doing the opposite pretty much, which is getting barefoot, walking on grass, just starting to get my foot used to that and get it stronger. And that's kind of the best way to do it, get it to move properly rather than being constricted in a boot. for weeks. So
Yeah,
that
that for
kind of
sure made
no, yeah, go for it.
for sure made it worse. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So I honestly I stopped listening to the doctor's advice, and just started doing my own thing. And so I got into toe yoga. That was kind of the first thing. I got into toe yoga, did a lot of soft tissue in my foot, not only on the bottom of my foot, but those little crevices in between each toe. Um, yeah, just all over, I think helped just to open up space, loosen everything up in there. Yeah, if you've never done soft tissue on the top of your foot before, your mind would be blown. Yeah. So if anyone's listening to this, like, please go and try that and give us your feedback. You're going to be mind blown. Um, yeah. So I started doing that, and then just some other strengthening type stuff like towel curls, marble pickups, stuff like that. Um, and then I started really focusing on my foot's connection with the ground as well, and what parts of my foot were in contact with the ground during certain movements. So, for example, doing a single leg RDL, how is my foot in contact with the ground? Is it stable? What part of my foot am I pushing through? Um, Stuff like that. I just tried to focus on really my contact with the ground. And I knew that my cleats were a problem, from doing all this research because of how constricted everything was. I couldn't feel what the ground felt like at all. So, um, yeah, I actually, the same physical therapist that I chatted with about the how behind everything, he found Nature Athletics and recommended it. So yeah, I reached out and got a pair very fortunately, and honestly, they helped me so much, so much. Um, I never had a foot problem after that, and I think that it honestly helped me throughout my career too to get one more year of feeling good. So I loved the cleats. I thought they were the most comfortable cleats I've ever had in my entire life by far. Um, and I didn't feel like they affected my play at all. A lot of my teammates questioned, like, "Oh, are those? Can you still like pass a ball? Can you can you shoot? Can you dribble? Can you do all of this?" And I was like, "Yeah, it feels completely normal to me." Um, so yeah, I never really turned back. Those cleats helped me so much, and my feet felt so much better. I felt like I was just moving properly. Um, yeah, they definitely helped me out so much. So I'm super grateful.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that it was able to help you out and give you that extra year on your career and make it so that you could thrive. I love that it also did not affect your play adversely. In fact, it probably helped you out. I have had plenty of other soccer players that were like really skeptical about using them, and then they use them and they're just like, this is insane. Some players, especially goalies, they have a specific way of hitting the ball where you're hitting it on the top of your foot with like those goal kicks, and you have a way larger contact with the Nature Athletics cleat than any other cleat, and so it makes it so that you have more force and a larger sweet spot. And so I was talking to a D1 soccer coach, a women's soccer coach. He's a head coach that wears our cleats, and he's like, "These are the most natural cleats I've ever worn, and it feels like I'm playing beach soccer." I'm just like, "That's the greatest compliment I could ever receive."
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. It's funny. My coach and some of my teammates would make jokes about the surface area that I have for hitting long balls. They were like, if I hit a really good long ball, they would be like, ah, he's got too much surface area. Of course, he's gonna hit a perfect long ball. And I was like, hey, if it works, it
Yeah,
works.
you had a huge driver, man. You had a huge freaking driver, right? And so like that's great. Like if you're somebody that's in a kicking sport and you need to have better contact area and a better sweet spot and better accuracy, pick these suckers up because you're going to smack that ball real hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Man, well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that like this was able to help you out, and I'm hopefully this will be able to help other people out that see this and are encouraged by it and be like, "Oh, you can perform at an extremely high level in these cleats." And they're also going to help clean up any sort of ailments that you have. But the shoes weren't magic. You yourself had to do some work on the back end in order to like open up your feet, your toes, release the intercostal muscles, which is that top of the foot massaging that you were talking about. Reset your ability to move by like thinking about how you move, where you're loading that pressure, because God made us to move outside to inside. We're supposed to move outside on a lateral arch, finish off on the medial arch. We move in spirals. Everybody can do this with their foot even. It's called a teacup. You do a teacup on the ground with your foot. It's craziness because you move in
Yeah.
spirals. And so most people don't think about that. And you took the time to learn a new way to move, recalibrate your feet, and then thrive in these cleats because you were willing to put into work to figure out there's a better way, there's a better how. And you're living proof of the how is really important.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you said it exactly. It goes hand in hand. So I think if if I would have done the work with my foot but stuck with my old cleats, maybe I would have had the plantar fasciitis continue on. I probably would have, to be honest. So I'm very glad about that. And then if I didn't stay on top of my own foot strength and mobility and soft tissue, but I just used the Nature Athletics, I'm sure I still would have gotten strengthening because the cleats are just built that way, but maybe I wouldn't have had the mobility that I had. Maybe I still would have had something lingering. So I think it definitely goes hand in hand. And also, the fact that I did both hand in hand helped me improve my overall performance as well. Um, so it's not just a one thing fixes everything principle. You have to be willing to do the extra to really figure out how, like we talked about, to maximize performance, and that's being very very particular with everything that goes on.
Yeah, well said. Be bold, be not afraid to be different. Maybe your teammates are going to look at you a little bit funny at first, but guess what? The second that you actually perform over and above what they're doing, they're going to shut up. That's what happened to me in the Marine Corps. People shut up real fast where I was the second fastest person in the platoon. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. And it's funny, a lot of my teammates throughout the year, if they kind of gave me stick for having the cleats, I was like, no, my feet feel amazing. And then later on, months down the line, if they had a foot problem, who would they go to? Me. Of course, I would tell them exactly what I did. And they would be more and more interested in it. And the more that they would do, the more bought in they would get. So, yeah, I think it seems like we're trending in that direction in terms of people realizing how important our connection is with the ground and our feet in particular. So hopefully it keeps spreading. But I agree 100%. You have to be yourself pretty much, and to trust what you're doing. So completely agree with that.
yeah. Be bold, be unafraid. Know that you are made for way more, and that you can build on rock or build on sand, and then you're going to see the consequences of it. And you chose to build on rock, and you're thriving, and you got your family that you're able to take care of because of your profession that is helped by Nature Athletics cleats, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that you are just such an amazing example for people. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for everything. I really appreciate you. You're an awesome guy, an awesome person. So grateful to have you.
Thank you. All right, well, see you later, everybody.